Or motion? Motion.
Do I hear a second? All right, let's just vote by acclamation. Any noes, any abstentions, any recusals, other than myself? Seeing none, the motion passes and we have approved the meeting minutes from March 31st. So moving on to old business, I think we can do this in chronological order. Kelly, how about you kick us off with your first one?
We had about 12 people there. We had them choose where they wanted to go the last one. It was just 2 hours and went fine. Oh, I have all the stuff in the back of my car. I gotta put in here.
Okay.
I parked really far away and I forgot.
Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. But thank you for taking lead on that. And you know, we can definitely keep stuff like that on weekdays in mind more often if it's something that you think is.
I don't know. I think maybe because it was Earth Day and it was spring break, I got a lot of kids.
So that's good to know too.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it was good we tried.
Vacation too coming.
Could be, yeah, but then everybody starts
People
to
are working.
stare about.
And they're at
Yeah.
camping and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not. I'm glad we did it. You know, it's good to do something for Earth Day, and it's also good to go through the experiment of, you know, if that's what we could get during spring break
Right.
on Earth Day, then, you know,
Like maybe we could work with the schools a little bit more.
Yeah.
So that when it does come, then it's kind of
Hey,
like,
look, get your community hours.
yeah.
I mean, to kind of piggyback off Liz though, maybe it would be good in the summer just to see, even if it is about getting, if it's just gonna be a bunch of kids out there, maybe that will still be good. Because I forget who it was, Rich, I think, talking about the schools last meeting. Maybe we could try to get them.
That's
If
an
it's
option.
just summer, I could probably take off a day.
Yeah, it's only 2 hours.
Yeah.
I'll take off a day. It's fine.
Listen, it's the sort of thing where as long as the juice is worth the squeeze, you know, if we think it's worth reaching out. I mean, so not only are there the schools, which I know we're trying to establish those connections with, but for the summer, there's also the recreational summer program. So that might be another possible opportunity for collaboration. All right, and then
Actually, sorry, real quick, just about the cleanup, just to piggyback off
Yeah.
this. I forget who mentioned, I think it was you, Jeff, who mentioned about potentially using the garden as kind of like the location
Yeah.
to meet up.
mhm.
I was thinking about it last night. Could we potentially, now granted, we may need a stronger lock if we're gonna do that,
Mhm.
put those supplies that you have in your car in there. That way we don't need to
Mhm.
necessarily even ask Tim or whoever needs
Yeah.
to be, can we get the little rakes and all that?
Here's my thinking on it,
Mhm.
right? And it's also one of those things where we can cross the bridge when we get there because there's so little in the chest right now. But that is, since it was bought for the garden, you know, as long as we're not pushing things for the garden out at the expense of cleanup day materials. Otherwise, yeah, I think that's a great idea. And you know, especially if it turns out we're not going to have a ton of stuff stored there, even when we have a full garden plot reservation and all that, then yeah, I think we should plan on it. I think it's a great recommendation. Anything else on cleanup talk before we move on to the community garden, which is, so that's a very good pivot for it. All right, seeing nothing, Dawn, would you mind
Sure.
updating us on community garden?
In all, I believe there were about 12 people who showed up, if you count every single person who came by at some point during the time.
Counts.
And the township that showed up as well to support us. We got all of the plots put in. The township came in, they mowed everything, weeded, we got dirt in every one of the plots. We put down all the weed barrier for most of it. We're gonna put, and so that's where that stands.
Yes.
I think it was really good. The two people who have paid so far, Rebecca and Les, they showed up on the day.
They're two new people.
Oh, they're two new?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Under your paper, the agenda, I added
Okay.
Thank you for
all
that.
the,
That's awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That's actually very helpful. So they both showed up. So Rebecca lives just down the street, and I have her number, and she said that she would communicate to us if she saw anything happening. So that's really good. I know some of us also live right near it as well, so you would also provide that information.
I think it's good for like all the gardeners to like look out for each
Yeah,
other, right?
absolutely.
That's the point of the
Yeah.
community, right?
And that's a really good point. This was something that I mentioned to Leslie when she came out on Sunday, was separate from making sure that all the gardeners feel comfortable with us and reaching out to us, bringing things to our attention. I want to make sure they know each other, right? I want to make sure that when they come by and they see somebody that they're not like, who is this? Do you belong here, right? It is about community, and we don't, you know, we can figure it out offline maybe, but even an unofficial sort of greet and gather, you know, just a happy hour kind of thing so they can all meet each other, or, you know, we'll figure something out. At the very least, I want to make sure they all are aware of each other and we have those lines of communication established. And then,
So
yeah.
that's just the old business, the new business we'll talk about. Okay.
That's what I was thinking,
Okay.
yeah. One thing I do want to throw in while we're talking about the community garden being open is that Dawn deserves, I think, a huge round of applause, no kidding, because she did all of the math, all of the building. I know you're shaking your head, but you did a lot of work and we really appreciate it, so thank you. John was a huge help. I mean, everybody who showed up yesterday was a huge help. John ended up building the storage shed, which was a huge help. And Beatrice donated a chain lock that's going to help make sure that it's nice and secure. And
she helped build the.
and she helped build and everything else, right? But it was, and Jeff was there too.
And I was there too.
And you were just there.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, it just shows how much this team has come, I call it a committee, has come together to really create something special for our community.
It was a team effort, really and truly. That's what I was getting at, and thank you all for help getting us where we are. 'Cause I was mostly asking people what was going on and nodding politely when I got answers. But no kidding. This is a federal grant. The fact that is done, it is on the ground, it is filled. That is a reality. That is really cool. And that was a team effort. And thank you all for your help in realizing it. So before we move on to communications and new business, I think this will be brief, but Jeff, how about you fill us in on the that CEPG grant?
So and I copied Zach on an email today because we still haven't heard anything about BPU and their website issues. But beyond just the current BPU issue, Rich emailed me and said he didn't have anything new to report, and he's usually sending stuff every day. But so it's just, I think with the spring starting, everybody's been a little busy.
Yeah.
But you know, we're paying attention to that stuff. I received it, I didn't ask him, but we finished our core training through Rutgers.
Oh, great.
And I got the certificate
I
already.
got mine too.
So if we need that on record, we can give you a copy or whatever. But
Yeah.
I'm assuming Rich got his as well, is why I say that.
Excellent.
So we did finish core training, current grant work still is up in the air.
Great. That congratulations on completing the course to you as well, Liz. And yeah, just keep us updated with the grant and any other grant opportunities that we should be keeping an eye on.
Sure.
Communications looks like can be pretty brief because the garden plot applications are provided here on the second sheet provided to you with the update as to new applications on the agenda.
With communications, like I had emailed you guys, CC'd, I guess, from somebody who was wanting to donate those seedlings. Is it okay to do that type of thing, like, because there's some committee for garden, so we could just start
Yes.
funneling?
Yes,
Okay.
that is actually exactly what I was gonna get up to when, after we were done with subcommittee updates. No, that was perfect, because I think that's something I think would be helpful for us to talk about in terms of lines of communication is making sure that the people, whether the right subcommittee, whatever, that they feel empowered to just answer those emails, you know, that we direct those emails to them, and that they are comfortable answering them without it becoming,
Must go back through me.
right.
Right.
So yeah, that absolutely. Those I think have, you know, what you handled this week was perfect, and hopefully we can get you a little more seamless about, you know, directing it to where it needs to go and responding to it in a responsible amount of time. So, but yeah, so that in terms of concrete communications, I think that's all we have to share at this point. You know, there are some other things, you know, in terms of like Jeff's ongoing emails with BPU, but right, it's nothing to report out of committee to the public at this point. So we'll circle back on that conversation about communication in just a second, but first, talking about cleanups, I figure we'll want to aim to do one in May. It seems like we're trying to get good about doing them on a monthly basis now. I think it was yesterday that I mentioned to a couple folks here that I noticed the rail trail needs a cleanup desperately, and I did talk to Public Works about it a little bit, which was helpful because they can do some of that site, but not some of the trail, but not all of it in terms of like access, and like they go back there to access some of the composting stuff. But this is all to say that if we were to do a cleanup, if we got some trash bags out there, pulled some of the stuff out of the creek, that they would be able to work with us. In
So
terms
do you
of-
want us to do it before they get back there, or do you want them to do their part first and then we get back there?
So I think when we discussed it, it was more along the lines of kind of us doing the heavy work. I mean, not like there's anything too heavy. The things that I noticed were like, there's shopping carts back there. There's what looks to be what I think are remnants of an abandoned homeless shelter of some, that I think somebody who's unhoused was out there, which is okay, but at a certain point the litter remains and somebody's gonna have to pick it up. So I can certainly see what they're willing to do before we get out there, but since it's not like tires or anything like that, I think they're probably gonna say that, we already do what we can. You guys, let us know where you leave those trash bags or the shopping carts or whatever. But I will, it's a fair question, and I'll see if there's any flexibility there. But I also don't want this, to be built in a china shop. If there are other areas that you think would be a good idea, or if you've noticed anywhere else I frankly, since the last two cleanups, I gotta say, I have personally consciously noticed the difference. Like the streets seem cleaner, which is pretty amazing. I mean, I don't know, I'm sure it
Walk down
kind of,
Garden Street.
well, I was gonna say, I know it depends
Takes
on where
the other day,
you
I'm like,
are. Yeah, and especially with all the wind we've had lately, there's only so much you can do to prevent the inevitable. But at least, my morning commute usually takes me to the corner of Pine and Washington and Mill, and then I either make a right or a left. And at least in those parts of town, even going up high, it seems, to the eye, it maybe it's confirmation of bias because we were doing all the things, but no kidding. So, I don't want to come in here saying this is what has to be done, but that was a starting point.
So
I
let's
thought,
add rail trail to it, and then also,
Yeah.
I think Woolman's Lake could use a good
Yeah,
day there.
yeah, and that's one of those things too, where I'd love if we had one of the turnouts like we had last time. In theory, we could split them, right, and you could do two in a day.
Right.
I don't want to count on that,
Right.
but I think those are two really good options. And for what it's worth, and if it sounds like Woolman Lake, or if we think Woolman Lake should be prioritized, then we can do that instead. I don't want to, say that it has to be rail trail first. So, I don't know if anyone else has thoughts, but
Is the rail trail from the distillery back
exactly
through
the one that takes you
cemetery?
to Pine Street. Yeah. I happen to live right near it, and I'm doing a lot of running there now, and that's why suddenly I'm noticing that it's.
So my only thing about Woolman's is, I'm granted new to the area.
Yeah.
Isn't all of that private property though? With the exception of like right outside the 7-Eleven, isn't that like everyone's backyard just runs up to the lake? Or am I thinking of the wrong lake?
So one side of the lake, I think maybe a couple of yards, but then the whole roundabout and the other side of the lake is all public.
Yeah.
Because there's like a walking path or something, right? There's definitely, so I think that stuff.
I mean, I don't even know if it's private, to be honest. I'm just,
I've only
Makes
been
it seem
around
like
where that
it's
7-Eleven is, so I thought that all of the lake was just there.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, that would be a big help.
I'm thinking if those three places, rail trail, Garden Street, and the lake, are high priority, we do the trail and streets first, because just based off of the whole cemetery cleanup we saw on the Facebook groups, people like rallying around
yeah.
like a location.
Yeah.
So Woolman's Lake could be like a one-day thing. Everybody clean up the lake.
Yeah.
Just like out loud.
No, I think that's a great idea. I mean, very selfishly, I was kind of hoping that, people would feel that way about the rail trail, but I think Woolman has a better reputation, it's a little more visible.
Yeah, because
Exactly.
people see it more,
Yeah.
right?
And we get a lot of
Talks
comments
about it.
Yeah, there's ducks in there and.
Frankly, I think a lot of people don't know. That's one of the reasons why I'm so hyper fixated on it. Is I'm convinced a lot of people in town either don't know that it's there, don't know that it's public publicly accessible.
The rail
but-
trail?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I never heard of it before you brought
Yeah.
it up.
And that's exactly, because it's a really cool thing, and it actually, I'm gonna circle back with you after, because I mean, it's one of those, I think it has a lot of potential, you know,
Sure.
not just in terms of cleanup, but, for, you know, there's murals back there and stuff, like, it has a lot of, yeah, so something for us to just kind of keep in the back of our minds, but I love that idea, you know, kind of like the, you know, rally for woman, or, you know, whatever we
Yeah.
wanna call it, and, yeah, at least for, I mean, I don't know how you guys feel. Do you want to do we want to focus on Woman for May and then look at Rail Trail for June, vice versa? Do we want to try to do 2 in 1 month? Is that too ambitious?
Maybe ask it differently.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of events happening at Roman Lake?
That's what I was thinking, like that woman, is there a,
Probably not until July 4th, right? And that's kind of near Woman. People will be around there.
Cause I think we tend to go and like, let's go clean it up
Before
before
the
that
thing, yeah.
happens.
It's a good
I
point.
can check on that.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be helpful. And then I think,
Or we can create an event.
well, yes.
And the thing about the rail trail,
Mm.
the further into the summer you get, from here.
Mhm.
It's a
Mhm.
fee, and so
Yes.
let's do,
Maybe
get that
that
done
first.
before.
Unless there's something happening
Yeah.
at Lumen's beforehand.
And I don't know, you've probably lived in town longer than I have, but my impulse is always that lakes can get a little buggy in the summer too. Is it not as bad?
I don't think it is because it's not as swampy.
Okay.
I think at night it would be bad, just with the
Okay.
mosquitoes.
With mosquitoes, yeah.
So that's so maybe unless there's an event at one or the other that would influence us. Otherwise, maybe let's tentatively plan on the rail trail for May and then Woman for June. And that's tentative, right? If we hear otherwise, or if anybody has any other ideas, we could.
And not to derail us from, but I so I recall from one pickup that there was like we were jointly picking up with the Public Works as well as ourselves.
Well, they were
Or-
cleaning up the bags that were too
Okay.
much for us afterwards.
Yeah.
And,
Maybe
the-
it was I'm sorry, maybe
the
it was a different,
businesses?
maybe it was a different time, but I recall there was some like joint cleanup time where they were doing things and we were also doing things, and maybe it wasn't as necessary for us.
There's,
Do you remember?
the last time, township had some sort of cleanup of their own, you know, like a paid one a week before ours. and we were laughing
Right,
about
so
that.
you were gonna let them know when we were gonna hit a
Yeah.
certain area and see if they were gonna do that area, so we don't.
Yes, we all remember jointly.
I'm glad somebody does, because I would not have.
So if you could check in with them for
Yeah.
the May for the rail trail and the
Yeah.
June for Women's Lake.
Absolutely, and maybe it'll be the sort of thing where, you know, even if they don't, because it's a big trail, like that's one of the things, like I would do it myself if I could, but there's no way, it's a lot. Maybe if they just kind of did an advanced guard of like, you know, the big stuff. One of my big concerns is making sure that what look to be abandoned former living areas are not still in fact being lived in, because that would change the arc of a cleanup quite a bit.
Is
but-
it kind of like a biohazard situation too, with what maybe they're.
That's a good, I hadn't even thought about that, but probably. And that, all the more reason for me to be extra conscious about reaching out in advance and at least making sure they can clean out, some of the big stuff, so, anything that would fall into a genuine public safety concern as opposed to
Right.
environmental cleanup. I think I will make sure they take care of it before we do that. And do we have a date that we wanna think about? Maybe, I won't torture folks on Memorial Day weekend, but
Or
the
Mother's
weekend,
Day.
or Mother's Day. I mean, we're already
So
almost
that
at
really
that.
leaves May 17th and 18th available.
Really?
I like
Alright, so how does that
Yeah.
sound? That makes it easy,
Well, you
okay.
got May 3rd and 4th, which is this
But that's
weekend,
crazy,
and
no,
then
no, no,
that's-
that's bananas,
yeah.
no. Yeah, I guess, well, do we have a preference between the Saturday or the Sunday?
So I found that Sundays are not working for people because
Yeah.
of church.
Okay,
And we should be cognizant of that.
yeah, okay,
So the 17th?
Yeah, I think that would be better.
that's fine.
Is that a good thing?
I won't be here.
Are you okay with that?
No, I'm going for
Both days? Like if it was the
I'm
18th,
leaving
would
on
you
the
be?
seventeenth.
Oh, so we were gonna lose you either way. All right.
Yeah,
I'll be drinking.
I might not, but I'll try.
I think I should be available. I haven't been available for anything else yet.
Right. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right?
Can I
Yeah.
ask a question about the trail?
You may.
Because I'm an old person. The walking, how, is it real bad?
No, it's 3/4 of a mile, and it is very little incline. I don't want to say it's risk free because there are patches where it's a little rockier, a little
Okay.
more uneven. There is a slight, I think it's a decline into an incline at one point near the mural, but this is not steep. It's not.
Okay.
I don't want to.
Less than 10 feet of incline or decline?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Very minimal, less than
Less than
6 feet.
5 probably,
Yeah. I don't want to speak to your comfort level, but it
No.
is not. If it were a hike, it would be lower than easy. It would be
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
As long as you stay on path and
And the paths are okay?
the paths are okay.
So you said it starts at the distillery and ends at Pine Street?
Yes.
So would it be, if we had a bunch of people to start on either ends and then work their way in?
It shouldn't
in this
take that.
case?
Yeah. I mean, it would be.
Cause you don't want people to keep walking over the areas that other people have already cleaned, cause then it's kind of like.
That is a good point. I mean, right. It depends on whether you want to work, one way to the other, or whether we want to meet in the middle.
How would organization of that?
That is my big
Telling
concern logistically.
Parking.
You go over there, you go over there,
Right.
would that be for
No.
a meeting?
Well, that's why I wanted to talk about it in the meeting on that one.
I'm a little. In this area, I'm definitely a little biased because I live on Pine, so I think of it as going from Pine to Madison, and that in my
You have a
head it made a lot of
parking
sense to do parking at the. But there's definitely parking across the street. There's parking on both sides actually. There's the lot across
Right.
from the distillery, and there is very ample street parking along Pine. So, it kind of, I don't want to be like it depends, but my thought is especially between the community garden as a potential staging site, the firehouse as a potential staging site. Really, we could stage anywhere. We just stage at one
I mean, I would
entrance
rather
or
be
the
there,
other.
people could drive there.
Yeah,
Cause I had
yeah.
people who were cleaning up and then they were like, can I go drive to Washington Street,
Yeah.
and do this? And I was like, yeah, totally.
Of course, yeah.
So I think it'd be, if we can kind of like,
Just say meet there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would probably be easiest in terms of just location, because just using Jeff as an example of not knowing it, probably saying like meet at either the Advanced Auto Park, because that's a huge parking lot right there, or at Trainwreck, but
Right.
they can't park at Trainwreck.
across the street, it's just.
Yeah, across the street. And that's a landmark for
Right.
people that, what the hell is a rail trail?
So does the rail trail go beyond, like behind the bagel place and then beyond that way too?
It does, but I would suggest that we not worry about that right now.
Okay.
That is a whole separate
Okay.
thing going on with the town, and I will leave it at that.
does?
Yeah, and it is
Well, because
very,
it's a railroad.
exactly, it is a
It goes
very
somewhere.
uniquely complicated legal issue with federal railroad laws and stuff like that, and it is a Conrail line. It does technically extend beyond there, but it's also not used nearly as much. Like, it's just a different animal back there for a lot of reasons. So I would, for me personally, I would focus on Madison to Pine,
Okay.
and then depending, from there, if we want to get more ambitious, we can revisit the portion behind Big Valley Deli.
Are there any issues with potentially getting Trainwreck involved? Not as a sponsor, but.
Well, I think you're reading my mind. I was just, I think something we can talk about doing potentially is, well, right now, we can think about local restaurants or businesses to reach out to that are near the area and might, really embrace that opportunity. And then the other thing was, if we say something to the effect of, as we talk through it, I'm wondering if meeting outside of Trainwreck is a good idea, because it's just a very easy landmark. We don't have to say, let's meet, in the parking lot of the Raceway Hobby and the advanced environmental services or whatever, so we can say meet outside of Trainwreck, park across the street, don't park in the Trainwreck parking lot. And then, if Trainwreck, once they find out about this opportunity, wants to have some employees who are wearing shirts and want the good press, or, you know, if they want to turn it into, you know, I'm not gonna speak for them, but, you know, if they want to embrace the opportunity to get involved, I'm not gonna chase them away. So, but how does that sound in terms of the 17th, meet at Trainwreck? What time are we thinking?
What time does
10:30,
Trainwreck
11?
open?
Until one,
Right.
That would be
So,
I'm just saying, so when we're done, it'll
Right.
be open, we're not trying to wait for it.
Well, that's perfect, right, exactly. I mean, even if they don't officially sponsor us, I'm sure a lot
I mean,
of us who
I
can
may
would
end
like
up
to.
there at the end, whoever happens to be there.
1 till 11.
1 to 11, alright, so what are we thinking, like, 10:30, 10, 1, 11, I mean,
I think 11's good.
okay.
That's what we did our last one.
And it
Well-
went to 2 hours.
Yeah.
So what I'm wondering though, I mean, I guess it's not that big of a deal, because when you're walking it without picking up trash, it literally takes 10 minutes. It's like the shortest walk in the world. Because I was gonna say, because what's gonna happen is if we meet there, they're gonna work their way through, end up at Pine, and then they're gonna walk back through. So I'm wondering if it makes more sense to meet on the other side, but I
Cars
prefer
are
to
still
eat.
needed there, and you have to walk back.
That's also a good
And
point.
if you're drinking, you should have a walk anyway.
Right, I was gonna say, honestly,
Shuttle people to the other side.
This is very advanced now.
all of a sudden we're coming to a budget and it's very complicated. I mean, I think maybe let's stick with the original plan, right, this way if they have to, you know,
Who wants to run at the bottom or at Pine Street and then work their way back?
Right.
We got a few people do that.
yeah, alright, so we'll meet at Trainwreck, let's say 11 o'clock on Saturday the 17th. Any objections, concern, final questions before we finalize that? Took a deep breath. I want
No,
to
I was just gonna say someone should probably reach out to Trainwreck and just.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
I've made a mental note. I don't happen to have their contact information. I can ask around, or I can
We can get it.
DM them on Instagram in a very professional way. And anyhow, so and let's now that we got that in the books, we're gonna do two things with subcommittees. One, we are gonna go through any updates of, so Jeff already provided his in terms of the grants. Really, I don't know how much there's to add between, that we already covered cleanup and community garden stuff, but I do want to give folks the opportunity, and then once we're done with that, I'd like to revisit that conversation about communication flows and responding to emails based on topics and stuff like that. So, are there any subcommittee chairs, subcommittee members who have something they'd like to report out of their subcommittee? Any questions, concerns for the benefit of the full committee at this time? Okay, seeing none, I think we can, jump to that conversation about communications, right? So just picking up where Kelly left off earlier, right? It's this idea of if we get a question about the community garden, right? I want to submit an application, or, I wanted to swing by. Once that goes to Kayla, what happens after that, right? Is that a fair characterization? What I was thinking, because this thought had struck me too, is that the good rule of thumb, and I don't know how Kayla would feel about this, is I'm okay with you forwarding that email directly to the subcommittee members, CCing me, just so I know that it's happening. And of course, if you have any questions, or if it doesn't fit neatly into one of the pre-existing subcommittee boxes, then that's something we would sort out separately. But yeah, I mean, and with you as vice chair, if you'd like to be CC'd as well, of course,
That's okay, as long as one of us have it.
I think that's fair. And then, that's something I think that I guess you should just all be prepared for coming down the pipeline now, that if you get those questions, hopefully a lot of them are things that we've already contemplated and discussed and you feel comfortable responding to right away. And of course, if not, and you do want a second opinion before responding, please feel free to reach out to me and Kelly. If we need to escalate to the mayor or Josh Brown, we can certainly do that. It is best to err on the side of caution with these things, just to make sure we don't end up committing ourselves to anything that is not legal, or legal, let alone legally required, or et cetera, et cetera. We just do want to make sure that we are always, doing the, giving the responsible answer, right?
Can I ask a question with respect to, like group emails? Do you have some kind of, major domo or,
Distribution
yeah,
list?
distribution list, thank you, that you can set up so that we just type in it's community garden members and it just like populates it automatically, or does Mount Holly not have that?
Not that I know
Do you have
of.
Outlook?
Yeah, Outlook can do it.
But I don't know if we are part of that.
No, I think we can. On Outlook,
So-
send emails.
They would have to enable it for external,
Yeah.
and if they're not gonna give us access to the OneDrive, they're
Okay,
probably
so
not
never
gonna
mind.
let us
Yeah.
have the
Yeah.
distribution
Done.
list access.
But I mean, but it's still a good idea. It's something you can replicate on your own, right? Or
Yeah.
I mean, luckily at this point, for
There's more.
right, it's not a huge concern. But hopefully, right, when we get to a point that it is a lot of names to be typing in individually, we can get something more efficient, more streamlined. Any other, in terms of subcommittee goings on, in terms of the communication situation in general, does anybody have any thoughts, concerns? I do want to make sure, anything else really,
Did you forward to them Art Smith?
I did not, and I should have. That's on me. I will do that. So we did have a volunteer reach out. Originally, I had given him the days where we were meeting up as a group to volunteer, and put stuff together. And the timing just didn't work. And it sounds like the volunteer kind of prefers to work on his own. But that's no excuse. I'll forward
Even
that.
just as a subcommittee, just introducing them.
Absolutely, right. I'd like to think that it's being offered with good intentions.
Yeah.
It's someone we can trust, but, we also,
I just found out he is on Main Street Mount Holly board too.
Okay.
Not the board, but he's part of the volunteer group there. I think to be trustworthy enough. But he ran a community garden in Phoenix. So he has some experience with that kind of stuff. So that's why he was offering to kind of.
I'm really glad you mentioned that because I had forgotten, and that's a really, yes, exactly. And I'm sure the community garden subcommittee folks will, those are good points of contact. Anything else? I thought I heard something on this part of the side of the room. No? Sometimes you say it and it just stimulates conversation, but, okay, so, unless there's anything else under new business, we can move on to public comment. Anything else before we move on to public comment?
Just about recognition, what was it, Harry and Dom?
Harry and Dom, yeah.
I don't know what the township can do just to send them an email and thank them. They did fantastic
Yeah, from Public
on
Works.
Sunday.
Yeah, they were
Yeah,
amazing.
they went
Yeah.
above and beyond.
Took the words right out of my mouth. Yep.
So, I don't know if you guys have a recognition thing, email chain, anything like that.
I'm glad you said something because that's absolutely
They
true.
were very nice.
Those were the public workers?
Public
Yeah.
work
They
guys,
were
yeah.
very friendly in the brief time.
All right, so, no, I'm glad you mentioned that, John, and unless there's anything else under new business, we can open up the floor to public comment. Public comment?
Yep. Luis Lopez, my hand is on the 11th. I would like to show you, I did a YouTube video of the Mahali Trail 2 years ago, April 7th. If
great.
you have a chance, look at it. It's 2 years old, but if you want a chance, look at it. It took 15 minutes. I mean, nice and food. I said I would definitely will help with the Mahali Trail. No problem at all, day and night. The question still not there.
Yeah, I wouldn't go there at night.
No, wait here. The question not there is the winter storm. Now I would say at 4:30 in the morning, I would say, oh, I want to try the heat vision goggle. Okay, I went 4:30 in the morning
Yeah.
on my way to work.
Wow.
I went from the train track, cross, activate my heat vision, and it was something. It was like animal got stuck. I just lift a wood and help that animal in the day. Animal go their own way.
Do you want to send the link to either the Facebook page or one of our emails so we
Yeah.
can just
Yeah, because
post
if
it?
we advertise that out, that will help people to show up.
Yeah, it's a simple thing. It's a simple search. Luis
YouTube?
Lopez Manhali. That will come at the first search.
On YouTube?
Yeah, on YouTube.
Well,
Yeah,
it's a great recommendation. Thank you for letting us know about it.
yeah, and like I said, it was experience.
Yeah, that sounds like it.
Yeah, I thought that, and I wasn't scared at all.
Well, that's good to hear, though.
Yeah, I
I'm
wasn't
glad-
scared. I wasn't. I was just it was okay. I was thinking, okay, this is doing all right. Okay, I'll do it myself. I'll record it at 4K.
Mm.
Then my second question is, did that book help when I donated?
I looked through it, but I just gave it to Zach now because we hadn't seen each other.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I'm sorry, I missed last meeting, so this is my first chance to look it over. But it looks very helpful, and I appreciate it.
If you have a chance, if you could look at the video minute, that would help. If you had any questions, it's 100% unedited video minute from the last minute. It's been recorded. Like I said, I used to be a green team. I used to fix computer on the Recycle E-Day. I used to fix 5 computers. Yeah, I did. I took it out, pulled apart, simple fix. You know, and I donated it back to the green team. And I said that was fun. And and second question is like my high class, I definitely would do that. And for the cleanup day, I would like to do that first thing in the morning. Since I work in the week, I close. I'm a shift manager. I close on the weekend. And if I do it in the morning, 2 hours max, I would definitely help out. I do have free time, and I do coming out. It's a beautiful in my holiday.
Yeah, I think mornings would be good when in the summertime too. 'Cause
Yeah,
it
Or gets hot.
absolutely. So yeah, keep an eye out for that in the summers. We'll start moving those times up to, and hopefully you'll be able to join us.
And one thing is, a couple of weeks ago, I found a grant that for the firemen and the police department. There was grant I sent to them. There's another grant that I was listening to NBC Kent that was getting out. I'll probably send it to you link as soon as I read to the email they send me. A grant that will help people improve their town, like the environment. You know, they send them the link, and paragraph. They actually match out grants to you guys. You know, if you waste $7,000, and you know you keep all that receipt, and they will grant you back $7,000. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's all my my opinion. And thank you for having me as a guest.
Of course. Thank you, Ms. Lopez.
Thanks for showing up.
All right. Looks like that concludes public comment. I think we've covered a lot of bases at this point, but I'd be remiss not to ask, are there any others to be discussed by the public? Questions, concerns, anything?
Liz, you had some good ideas at the last meeting that you were doing some research. Well, you can talk about it if you want to.
I would love to, I just haven't had time to. I was supposed to research more about no-mow May or low-mow May. May is in what, 3 days?
Yeah.
4 days?
But it lasts a month, so.
You learn about something, get very eager about it, and the deadline's gone.
It's work is done.
Yes, and when you work and volunteer.
But I can still, before the end of the week, try to get some kind of logo or something that we can post on social media about it.
I can do the logo. You just tell me what you want. I can do it like this.
All right,
She's good.
We'll
Right, AI, make a logo.
Way to interrupt.
We're creative on what you
Blowing
tell
your spot.
AI.
There's a,
There's something that I can use.
yeah,
Well,
there's
well,
an organization that like started it nationally in the UK and then
Yeah,
came over to the US, and they have packets
Okay.
that I looked at last month when I brought it up, and then haven't looked at since.
Okay.
And the other one was I was supposed to get in touch with the environmental club, breeder
RV.
of RV, and I did not do that for composting.
Well, I haven't done it for 2 years, so there you go.
It's okay. So I wouldn't. It is okay.
I'm gonna be very honest, I'm gonna be stretched thin until the middle of June, so I will do my best.
No.
After that, I should have tons of free time. Hopefully.
So listen, this is a volunteer. Yeah, it's a volunteer committee. We're not looking to put you in a bad spot, and we appreciate the heads up. Right? We'll adjust.
We help each other out.
Exactly.
So, was that all? Or did you
I will try to find.
Sorry.
No,
I
it's
I
okay.
wanted to make sure before I said something.
I will get information for a post, and I will find more information about compost before
You and
next
I-
month.
We can,
And I have to look at
well,
the
yes.
sustainable
Well, I was
journey
gonna say, we
stuff.
can loop composting into the miscellaneous kind of ad hoc committee. I actually happen to have a background in composting, so I might be able to help you out with some of that stuff, and, maybe I can take some of that workload off your plate, so.
I don't even know what the workload is.
Well,
right now, so.
I'm not quite sure what you're researching, but I might already have the answer for you, you know, so it's,
Community or, township composting or personal composting program.
Oh, right, and then having our own little individual.
Yeah.
Right.
And have to bring that to the community part.
so, whether I wanna be respectful of everyone's time since it's, I mean, 6:45, we have a little wiggle room. But that is a bill that this is one of the things that I follow in my, you know, my day job, but, there was recently a bill that is supposed to help facilitate composting at community gardens, so that is something we might wanna keep an eye on, especially as we get our feet under us a little more with the community garden and, you know, as the cleanups start to become a little more automatic and we start getting a little more ambitious, so, I know, Dawn was very eager to say something.
I was. So, now that we have $25 for each of these gardeners, did we say what we were gonna do with the money?
So we haven't, and this is a legal question actually for the town, because
Okay.
one of the things that we did when we set this fee is, the general legal principle is that it's supposed to kind of be commensurate for the work that goes into it, right? That the town, you know, the administrative cost of this. I don't know if there was a hard and fast kind of formula that went into it. Frankly, $25 is as low as you're gonna find anywhere, but, it also doesn't really seem like, you know, it's certainly not part of the grant, right? They don't say what the money has to go to. So the question becomes, you know, what, is it legal, you know, what, this is all to say, no, we haven't figured it out yet. I will
Okay.
find out if there's anything that has to be spent on.
Okay.
But, something that it's a very timely question because, we have gotten some donations, in addition to the $25 from each of these gardeners, from folks who want to sponsor a plot when somebody comes along and says that they have financial need. And some of them said, you know, well, here's $25. If somebody comes along and says that, great, and if not, you can use it as you see fit. So if it, you know, if it turns out, you know, I'll look into what the options are and how much flexibility we have, but that's as much as I know at this point.
So then, there's a lot of plots that have not been taken.
Yes.
So I think that as a subcommittee member or team, we'll come up with some recommendations for what to do with those undeveloped plots.
Do we have a number of sponsored plots already? Is it?
So it depends on how you look at it. I don't know if we have what is sponsored in the traditional sense, right? Nobody has done like
Here's my.
here's my company. So Jean and Janae and Gray, Leslie Berry, like she has reserved a plot. I don't know that she's gonna be like sticking a sign in the ground that says this is, you know, sponsored by Janae and Gray. She's certainly welcome to, but that is as close to sponsorship as we've had so far. Everyone else has been, you know, normal private citizens, and I have reached out. I've strongly, you know, in all of the Facebook posts and all the emails, I say, you know, like we welcome local businesses, we welcome houses of worship. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, and that's great too, but I don't know if I'm just putting my own definition on it,
Yeah.
but it sounded like there were people who were like, I'm not gonna plan anything, but let me pay for somebody.
So yes. If you're talking about sponsorship in that sense, we've actually had a couple of those offers. The problem is that it requires somebody on the back end to say, I want to garden and I don't have the money, and we haven't had anybody approach us about
Gotcha.
that yet.
Okay.
And I'm glad this is being recorded, because I, you know, hopefully between Facebook and email, the word is getting out, but we really and truly, we don't want anybody feeling deterred from doing this because of cost.
course.
There are resources out there, but until somebody comes along that, you know, we don't have, it's not like the money's in hand yet, so
There's no
that is,
transfer until somebody's actually.
exactly, we're not coming, calling for the money until we have somebody lined up. I hope that answers your
No, it
question.
does, that's
Perfect.
perfect.
Anything else?
Actually, just about signage, could we try to see if the one that's on High Street or whatever, could that say like community garden open or something, just to continue to have
Yeah,
more verbiage?
absolutely. that's a great recommendation. I will pass that.
Maybe a
along.
little long for that sign, but I don't know what limits are for road signs.
Calls an
Community
accident,
garden.
just a
Yeah,
long-
community garden arrow.
Well, if they can fit it, it'll
Yeah.
kind of defeat the point of if like it's community garden on screen 1 and then open on screen
Yeah,
2. That's what I like. I'm thinking it's probably gonna end up happening, but if they can do it, it would be good. Yeah. So I think that's a great idea, though. You know, we'll keep trying to get the word out. Those applications will continue to be accepted and reviewed on a rolling basis. And then, again, going back to the idea of composting the community garden, that's just an example of starting to get the wheels turning about, you know, what our you know, not that we need a big project, but hopefully the heavy lifting for the community garden is over. Hopefully the cleanups are starting to, you know, it's not like we need to reinvent the wheel every time. Hopefully those are becoming a little more automatic. So there were some ideas from before the community garden got rolling that we can think about. I'll leave those for future meetings, you know, as that capacity comes up. But as you hear about things, whether it's grants, whether it's projects, whether, you know, we're going to go through the survival projects guide and see if there's anything in here that might be a good fit. You know, be sure to jot them down, share them with the committee, and you know, we can lean into them as the capacity becomes available.
Was there any more raised beds that were available?
There's 5.
So someone had an idea of moving one of those into where the butterfly garden's supposed to be, to put some flowers in there to see if butterflies will come back to the butterfly garden that's on High Street. I was wondering if that's possible or not, to move one of those raised
I
beds.
thought we figured out last month that the butterfly garden's no longer there because of Verizon. That's the word.
And Jean and Gray's, Les is trying to, she's on the phone with Verizon a lot to try to figure out whose owns that spot. And we think they just mowed it down because,
It was there. And
yeah,
Because it looked like weeds.
Yeah.
It was.
right. But so she's like working with Verizon corporate to try to like claim that land somehow, and make those parcels like, yeah. And then,
we could probably move it.
So we could, my concern is where they are now is a secure site and everything is pretty secure. The waist-high ones are the most stealable, for lack of a better phrase. And if that site is not secured, I'd like to think that if we put it there that we wouldn't have a problem. I'm not even concerned about somebody stealing. I'm concerned about, like God knows, kids coming through bashing it with a bat or whatever, right? Like, if we had faith that it was gonna be secure, I would say absolutely, right? We have nothing to lose. But I don't wanna send one up there and have it go missing or destroyed, and then we're down a raised bed.
What about just one of the ground plots? It'd be heavy. Kids are gonna break whatever kids
yeah,
are
what if
gonna
we put a
break.
ground plot there and then Verizon doesn't do anything with it because it's like, this is sectioned off. And they don't even know why you're mowing it, Verizon, because,
It's outside of the fence.
Yeah.
Where is this?
so you know where Sugar Law Office is? And then once that's done, there's like a little patch of land, and then there's the Quaker Meeting House. That little patch of land has a butterfly garden sign, cause there was something that was planted there once, and then Verizon just mowed it all over. So,
Across from Janae.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so Les is trying to work with Verizon Wireless to find out who owns that spot, to say, can you stop mowing it?
Well, I mean, and this begs also a good question unto itself, which is, I would also like to wait until we find out who owns that property before putting town property on it. Maybe it's already the township's, in which case that changes the math, but if it turns out if it's Verizon's, it's one thing. If it's not Verizon's either, and there's some third party, again, especially in terms of site security, in terms of, there's actually some legal issues that kind of get wrapped up in, like, if we were to just put something like that out there for the public good, but we were, we didn't get permission, so it's a good recommendation. We can keep an eye on it, and as Les finds out more, we can definitely revisit it. For the time being, I would just suggest we put it on hold, until we have a little more clarity about the situation.
Just,
No, I was just gonna say, Kayla, not to add to your plate, but you work next to the people who who owns all the land in town, don't you?
Yeah, we're probably, well, probably that tax office.
could you just pop by tomorrow and ask them, like, if there's, what the town would know about who owns that? Because I feel bad for
Information that
Leslie if she is calling Verizon.
Well, that's the
and
whole thing.
Verizon doesn't
No, I
care.
appreciate her doing that, but that's a lot to ask of somebody when
Yeah.
it's not even their
Well,
property.
for
you know?
her, it's across the way, so she's trying to make it nice, you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It says it was originally funded by a grant from the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions. So if it was a grant, that means there had to have been a property or address
Mhm.
when they said, here's the grant, do it. So that's gonna answer yes or no, does Verizon have a claim to that?
Right.
I would imagine.
I'm wondering if it's owned by the Quaker Meeting House or something. Like, I don't know if it was because if it's
So
AMJAC,
let's
it could
let
be.
her find
Yes,
out.
but we'll find out, and
Yeah.
yes, and we can go from there though. That is helpful, right? I mean, surely there must be some paperwork. Yes, Beatrice.
The other thing is, can you take stuff from the grant for the community garden and
For
move it?
well, that's also a fair question. I don't.
Technically, there was,
Garden.
and it was, that we had overage, so
Yeah.
there were a couple of extra more than we had bargained for, or them.
That's a good point though, can you imagine stealing from ourselves?
Well, I mean, these days, no kidding. I mean, they are being very, they will take any excuse whatsoever to claw. This is a federal grant, you know, I will kind of leave it at that. You know, I don't want to give anybody any reason to claw back
Exactly.
this money, even if it's only $5,000. So, yeah, we'll be extra. I think it was a good idea, right? You know, once we have a little more clarity about a couple things, we will, we can revisit that. All right, so anything else for the good of the committee?
I have the re-examination report printed, does anybody want it?
Cool, because I didn't, so that's awesome.
I think you were asking for something on
I
there, like
was,
do
that's
the
why.
keywords, yeah.
Thank you.
It was printed for a while, but I ended up just not doing anything with it, so.
Yeah, no, cause like I
It's
said,
really long.
I think
It's
on the website that I found was, the last one was 2014, so that
Right.
was in the same
Right.
decade as the website.
If you want the digital copy, I actually should have it from
I
when I
did
was on.
send it.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
there you go.
Good. I was gonna say, because I should have a copy too, but it sounds like
Perfect.
you're all set. Cool. Anything else for the good of the committee? Seeing nothing else, we have a motion to adjourn.